Barry kind of talks like this. And he goes, are you going to do that the whole time? That's what he said. And I said to him, yeah, it's pretty much my plan. Like, I don't have another. I said, I don't have a plan B. Like, this really is it. And like, meanwhile, all the blood is rushing out of my head. Like, I think I'm done. Hey, I'm Vincent D'Onofrio, and these are my iconic characters. Daredevil. He's a very manipulative person, Wilson Fisk. He's sort of a genius at manipulating, and he's an incredible, you might say, chess player when it comes to life. And he's also a monster, and he's also a big baby.
I'm simply proposing an arrangement.
I don't do arrangements.
You should rethink that. Considering the amount of enemies you have in here.
I'm not gonna be your goddamn trigger man. I'm not doing it.
I'm offering you the opportunity to confront the man implicated in the deaths of your family. Yes, I benefit from your actions.
He's an interesting character to play. That's why it's still fun to play him. You know, it's you put a character like that in a domestic situation, like falling in love, getting married, having a relationship. He's just not normal, and he's not like you or me. Or to put that kind of person in a domestic situation is really a lot of fun as an actor, but really scary for everybody else. It's a very emotional part. It's all of that the stuff. Even his voice, I found through an emotion. The way he speaks has a lot to do with an event that happened in my life. And that's always in me when I'm speaking as him, speaking like him, whether it's laughing or experiencing joy or, being brutal to somebody. It's all comes from this emotional place. And so he's a very intense character to play. Even the smallest of scenes, or the biggest of scenes, they're all very intense to play, no matter what's going on in the scene, only because I have to bring so much into it, like many actors do. We bring a lot of stuff in that's not scripted, but that make us feel like we're a living, thinking character while the camera's rolling. And there's an abundance of emotions and events from my life that I'm juggling while the camera's rolling. So it would be acting, reacting, his voice I'm playing, his posture I'm playing, and then these emotional things inside me. It can be tough and tiring at times. But it's intense, and it works well for Wilson Fisk, for Kingpin. So these days I just play all that, and in the context of how a king would behave.
Who is this?
I think you know.
You've been asking about me. I thought it was time we spoke.
Well, it all started when I showed up on set one day. I'd only met Charlie briefly at a dinner with Jeff Loeb, who used to run Marvel Television, and he was our boss on Daredevil, a very hands-on boss, Jeff Loeb. Amazing dude. Also started in comics. I went to set. I had to do off-camera for Charlie. Charlie, we were on walkie-talkies as the characters, but Charlie was on a set, but I could see him on there. I didn't want him to be able to see me. And then we were actually talking. I was mic'd, he was mic'd, but we were talking on the walkie-talkie, having this conversation. He handled the dialogue great, and he was on the floor in this office. But then during the scene, he made this leap onto one of the desks and then leaped to another one and then walked on the furniture. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is actually Daredevil. I remember thinking, this is amazing. This is going to work. It all sort of just came to me in that moment. I said, if we're both kind of like grounded as actors and we're not playing like over-the-top superheroes, we're particularly over-the-top superheroes, and we keep the show grounded, and he can do that. And if I'm able to bring in what I want to bring in, this show is going to be good, I thought immediately. And so that's where we started. In my mind, that's where we started. My relationship started with him. And then you jump to now, and just over the years, we are real partners on the show. All of our notes are very similar all the time. We never disagree about anything. I'm doing my side of the show. He's doing his side of the show. And when we're both on set at the same time, I might be with second unit, or he might be second unit. But every time I'm there, or when I'm not there, I know that his side of the show is being done great, because I know Charlie is there. And also we have great producers, and I know the scripts are already good. I've been very lucky with scene partners like Kate Irby, who played Eames on Law & Order. She was an amazing woman and just an extraordinary actress too. And I've just been very lucky. I can't imagine working with anybody else this intensely on a show other than Charlie. He's really quite something, I think.
You're a real man of the people now.
A rich man, by his very nature, is self-serving. A mayor serves his city.
Huh. Did you ever expect to come back into this role?
Charlie didn't, but I did. You know, every time Charlie used to say, we're not coming back, I used to say, I think we're going to come back. And he used to think I was just being delusional, you know. I just felt like, you know, there was no reason other than them starting Disney Plus that we were pulled from Netflix. So we weren't pulled. We were at the top of our game on Netflix when we were pulled. People were loving the show. I know somebody like Kevin Feige is not going to not know that. Like, I know him and his people are going to know that we kicked butt. I just couldn't imagine them not seeing dollar signs and not seeing a great opportunity in some way, and not seeing them in their minds. I mean, I know this for a fact now because I know Kevin a little bit. You know, he's very into Daredevil, and I can imagine. I always thought, you know, if they're into Marvel characters, these are some cool Marvel characters, and that's why we're back, you know. That's why I thought we'd be back, and eventually we were. I hope Kingpin is in the movies someday. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe it'll be me. Maybe it won't. I don't know what they'll do. But right now they don't have the rights. They have a bit more rights than they did a couple of years ago, but you know, it's tough right now. They don't have the rights to a lot of characters from the Spider-Man series, but they don't have mine, not completely. So I think that's been holding it back a bit. But I hope to be able to do it. You know, we'll see. Full Metal Jacket.
Pull! Pull, Pyle, pull! One pull-up, Pyle, come on, pull! You gotta be shitting me, Pyle! Get your ass up there! Do you mean to tell me that you cannot do one single pull-up? You are a worthless piece of shit, Pyle! Get out of my face! Get up there, Snowball!
I approach things in a very practical way. My feelings about acting and my feelings about actors and directors and how to execute a performance and what an artist is and all that is, I have very romantic feelings about all that stuff. But when it comes to being on set and actually doing the work, it's a very practical thing that you have to get away with. So I'm not, you know, a lot of times I think people are bullshitting when they say that they did boot camp stuff and it was like real boot camp and everything. I don't think a bunch of actors could survive real boot camp, you know. That's just my opinion. But we did have to learn how to march. And Stanley told us early on that he was going to mix some actual footage from Paris Island with what we were doing. I don't know if he told me that or if that's what I heard. So I knew that our marching and cadence and monkey patrol with the rifles, you know, when they spin the rifles and all that stuff, had to be like really salty, like really, really good, like crisp. And so we really focused on that. And I had to handle the rifle and be able to take the rifle and put it back together blindfolded and all that stuff. That was all pretty easy stuff to do. But the cadence and the monkey patrol, spinning the rifles and all that was intense work. You know, it wasn't digging ditches or anything, but it was intense, and because it had to be perfect. To me personally, it never felt like we were actually at war or in some kind of real boot camp situation. You know, Full Metal Jacket was my first feature film, so I'd never worked with a director before, and Stanley worked in a very practical way too. So I was just following his lead. The actually execution when the camera was rolling, sometimes with Lee and I and Modine and Arliss Howard, it got intense at times. It was pretty intense while the camera was rolling, especially some of those boot camp scenes.
How do you feel like that experience impacted your career as far as that being your first?
I don't think I'd be here talking to you right now if Kubrick didn't cast me in that movie. I mean, I have no idea. I'd been on Broadway probably I would have stayed in the theater and just done that kind of stuff. But I was a big film nerd and wanted to do films, but I had no agent at the time. I just kind of sent the tape like everybody else did, you know. Modine gave me the address and I sent it. It was a long shot, and I, you know, suddenly I was in that film, and if it wasn't for Stanley, I really don't think I would have the career that I have.
Do any of you people know where these individuals learned how to shoot? Private Joker.
Sir, in the Marines, sir!
In the Marines, outstanding. Those individuals showed what one motivated Marine and his rifle can do. And before you ladies leave my island, you will all be able to do the same thing.
Stanley was very aware that I was very green when it came to filmmaking. Without giving me any speech or anything or talk to me about anything in particular, he was also the kind of director that didn't want to talk about process or anything like that, which is fine. With me, I work with all kinds of different directors, and that's fine. But Stanley was one of those directors that didn't want to talk about acting, didn't want to talk about the performance or the execution of it in any way, or the actual scene itself he didn't want to talk about, but he did know what was right, and he did keep you going until you got it right. He wanted to see what kind of actor I was and how far I could go emotionally and how far my intensity was. So we waited. I think he waited for a long time. There was one scene where I was sitting outside on the bleachers and Lee is doing a speech about snipers in the context of assassinations. I did this thing. I wasn't directed to do it, but I just did this thing where I'm staring out into the distance where everybody else is listening to him. And I just kept the inner life going on and just stared out for his whole speech. And the next time I shot a scene, Stanley said, "Do you remember what you did at the bleacher?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, so this time," and it was the scene when Lee is handing out our orders, which is just before the bathroom scene. I was sitting on the floor. He said, "I'm going to raise the camera. I'm not going to bring it down to you. I'm going to raise the camera, and I want you to look at this mark, but I don't want you to move your chin. I just want you to look up at it." And I knew immediately that what he was talking about, because I had seen it in Clockwork Orange and The Shining. And so I'm like, I guess I'm doing one of these Stanley Kubrick shots, you know, like in my head, I'm like, oh shit, like I'm on, you know, it's me, it's my turn, you know? So he kept on raising the camera and look up a little higher at the mark, a little higher at the mark, keep your chin down like that. And now just play it the way you played that scene that we did in the bleachers. And I just did that. And then for every scene after that stare was in it a bit. And then eventually in the bathroom scene when I kill the sergeant myself, that whole look developed into that whole, the tone of that scene. And the way that I'm speaking and in that scene and the way that I'm sitting in the bathroom and I sit back to kill myself and stuff, all of that comes from me first doing a thing on the bleachers and then Stanley turning that into the Kubrick stare thing and then me just riffing on all of that stuff. Men in Black.
Oh, your skin is hanging off your bones.
Oh, yeah. Is that Leonard?
I had done a movie with Stacy Scher, who, as far as I'm concerned, back then, she was one of the best movie producers. She ran Danny DeVito's company for a while, and then she started making movies with Tarantino. But anyway, I had done Feeling Minnesota with her as a producer with Keanu, and I played brothers in that with Cameron Diaz. And years later, I got a call from her saying, "Hey, it's, you know, Stacy, she said, I've been talking to Barry Sonnenfeld. He's interested in you for a part, but he's asked me to ask you that if I'm going to give you the script that I have to promise," and this is the absolute truth, and Barry and I have talked about it since. I would have to promise that I would never speak to him about acting or the character or anything that had to do with my performance, that I would just say yes, and then I would just do it. I felt that was, I'd never heard about that before. I'd never had a director ask me that before. But I had just seen Get Shorty, and it was such a great movie. And I knew about Barry already because he was the cinematographer for Raimi and the Coen brothers early on. And when I started reading, this alien comes down and takes the body of a guy and then wears the skin for the whole thing. And I couldn't talk to the director about it. I had no idea. And the lines were kind of wonky and weird and sort of like punchlines, kind of. I had to figure it out. So I went and rented a bunch of videos on insects, documentaries on insects and blah, blah, blah. And I remember sitting on my couch with my roommate at the time, and I was doing a movie in LA at the time. I'm watching this shot of this beetle crossing this porch, and the camera sort of like moves in on this beetle and then tracks with the beetle. And I was just like, enough. I just got up and turned the TV off. I was like, I have no idea what to do. And so I was very frustrated, and I left the house and I walked down Laurel Canyon to Sunset Boulevard. And I'm walking on the street, and the absolute truth, I passed by a orthopedic store, if you've ever been in one, but they're always empty, but there's always somebody with a white lab coat in there. And in the window, there were these knee braces that like basketball players wear when they're injured. I didn't really question it. I just really not knowing what, it was all kind of full in my head, but I was attracted to these braces. In some way, I thought they could help, but it wasn't about defining. It was just about trying to research and see if this was going to be something. I went in and I explained to the guy, and he got very excited. I explained what I was doing, playing an alien and blah, blah, blah. And he thought it was amazing. He ran in his back room, and when he opened the door to his back room, it was like a storage room, and he was painting his walls in there. So there was like paint sticks and paint and rollers, and he went in there and he gathered up some duct tape and some paint sticks, and then brought these two braces out. And I kind of stood and bent my knees a little bit, and we put these on, and he duct taped the paint sticks to the braces, and then we did my feet like that. So basically, I couldn't move my knees in any direction. I couldn't move my ankles in any direction. And then I simply just tried to walk, and I was like, yes, like this could work. Like it all kind of came to me that like it's this 20-foot alien packed into this body. It would be tough for him to move, and that will frustrate him. So the whole character, really, the physicality of the character came from me going into this orthopedic store. I bought them. He charged me about $500 for both of them. And, I couldn't really afford it at the time, but I did it. And he gave me the paint sticks and the duct tape, I guess as a bonus or something. And then I went home and I went to my friend, hey, look, I'm going to try this thing. So he helped me do it, and we did it to my arms and my wrists and then I just tried to walk around, and I thought, this is really working. So I spent like a week doing the dishes in the house and like cleaning the house, making my bed with this thing on, and figured out the whole physicality in a week about how this guy could move and why. And it gave me all these new intentions for the character. And then I needed to find his voice. I had like one of the first big screen televisions, and I collect laser discs, and back then I had over 1,000 of them, and we were watching Chinatown, and in Chinatown is the director John Huston plays a part, and he plays Faye Dunaway's father in it. He has a voice that he accentuates the last vowel and things, so it would be like pond or how are you, it's good to see you, like that, Mr. How are you?
I still got a few teeth left in my head and a few friends in town.
And there was this one line about pond scum in the script. So I just said pond scum. And I'm like, oh shit, this could work. Like that could work, but I thought it was too slow for comedy. So I remembered George C. Scott's performance in Dr. Strangelove, where he played a general, and he kind of talked like this all the time, and he would like rush around and do like a somersault and stand back straight and talk like that.
It's jet exhaust frying chickens in the barnyard.
So I combined those two voices together and came up with the voice. Now, this is the point of the story. Months later, after working with Rick and Rick did the makeup, I was doing the voice and walking around Rick's studio, and Rick Baker, who won many Academy Awards for his makeup. While he was fixing my face and developing the makeup, I was developing the character with the voice and the movement and everything. And then skip a month later, I'm doing the first scene, which took place in a barn. Now, remember, Barry has no idea what I'm going to do because I wasn't allowed to discuss it with him. I promised I wouldn't, And I'm standing outside. It's a scene where I have to cross this barn, go into a barn, cross it, and kill the Orkin man. So I start this monologue, and I walk in, and I get halfway through, and Barry calls cut. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's like typical. It could be something technical or whatever. But then I saw the first AD go over to him, and the first AD turned with this microphone and said, Barry would like to clear the set. So, I started to walk off, and then I heard, not you, Vincent. Okay, I could be getting fired. We'll see. And Barry said to me, can you do that again? So I did it again, and he cut at the same place again. And he goes to me, Barry kind of talks like this. And he goes, are you going to do that the whole time? That's what he said. And I said to him, yeah, it's pretty much my plan. Like, I don't have another. I said, I don't have a plan B. Like, this really is it. And like, meanwhile, all the blood is rushing out of my head. Like, I think I'm done. Like, I think it's my last hurrah with Barry. And he said, my God, this is horrible. It's horrible. And I'm about to say, okay, where do you want me to go? And he said, it's really just, and he just kept shaking his head. And he said, but let's continue and see what happens, he goes. And I'm like, okay. We never spoke about it again. We just kept on shooting, and I just kept on doing that character the way that I brought it in full out. And I didn't get fired. And years later, Barry and I had a situation where we were able to talk about it, and we sat together and just talked about the whole thing, and it was just fantastic. The trust that he put in me. A lot of directors have done this for me, but that was a pretty big amount of trust he put in me to pull that character off for him, and I can never thank him enough for that. Caught stealing.
Why are you running? For what?
Relax. Just relax.
I got called in last minute to do that. I think a actor pulled out of it or something like that. So I had 3 weeks to learn Yiddish, and we had a lot of dialogue in Yiddish. Liev knew a little Yiddish, but not a lot, so he had to do it too.
Besser sicher wie Gicher. Nein? Oi Brommen ist heut. Ist das Feinkerein, so wenn ist das so.
But he had been involved, I think, with the project for like just under a year or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but I was just new to the whole thing. I'd met Darren once. I auditioned for him for something early on, which I got close to getting, but he didn't give it to me. Darren is great. He reminded me a lot of Stanley Kubrick, actually, because Kubrick was from the same area that Darren was from in New York, and their voices, their accents were very similar. And I was immediately comfortable with him. He's an amazing director, and he knows exactly what he wants and doesn't stop until he gets it. And I found it very easy to work with him. But I think I think him and Austin and Liev, the three of them were all very helpful. I was able to just immediately fall in love with Liev. I mean, he's such an awesome dude. I really focused on how much I liked him as a person and as an actor to give us some kind of chemistry and kind of brotherly love. And we were just bouncing things off each other all day. It was so much fun. And so the idea of executing these scenes with this Yiddish accent and in the Yiddish language was tough. It was tough, but they all supported me 100%. I wish I had, 2 months or 3 months to work on it, but I had 3 weeks. And Darren Aronofsky is one of my favorite directors. He always has been since he started. First thing I saw his film was Pi, and it was just amazing. Law and Order: Criminal Intent.
Is that why your girlfriends don't have patience for you anymore? Is that why you bring hookers home to flatter you? And young girls like Bethany, because they don't know any better.
I got a call from Dick Wolf, I guess, yeah. He asked me if I would be interested in doing some television. I'd only done a couple of guest star things when I was much younger, so I really didn't know much about television at all, especially doing one of the leads on a show. So it was a big ask. I definitely took a while to make my decision about it, but then I read the first script, and René Balsay was the showrunner for the first 4 years. It was just so good. The scripts were written so well. They were really kind of not whodunits, but whydunits, all about the intent. Very much like, Sherlock Holmes or Columbo, or it's really about if you find out why it was done, why the crime was done, then that will take you to the criminal. I realized immediately that it gave me an opportunity to create another version of one of these shows that are sort of like Agatha Christie or Columbo or whatever, Perot, or I always enjoyed those shows myself. And that was the thing that was on my mind mostly, was the fact that I could create another personality type that hadn't been done yet for that type of show. I had already been a bit versed in interrogation and in interviewing when it in the context of law enforcement, just from some research that I had done previous for other parts. So I went down the rabbit hole with that again. Mirroring is a big thing, to mirror, to match the person that's being interrogated by you's, to match their energy. There's all kinds of tricks you can play to get people to open up, or get people to wonder about you, which is like a trick to bring them in. But immigration officers, state troopers, agents for different organizations have all commented about my character on that show, and which I find pretty funny, that I learned from them, and then they would take ideas from me, and it was very bizarre, the whole thing. I remember one time in particular, I was getting off a plane in Australia. I was stopped by the immigration, and they brought me into this back room. I kept on asking them what's happening? Why aren't, do you have to search my bags, whatever you want to do. But they took me to this back room, and their boss was back there, and they just all wanted to sit and talk to me about interrogation. And I just thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever. But at the same time, it was sort of flattering that they would be even interested in this silly little thing that I did as an actor,
But if he tells us how he came by that knowledge, well, that implicates you, doesn't it?
That's not true.
Those interrogations that always ended the show, when we did this show, the crew and the writers used to call them the the arias, the last scene. They were usually anywhere from 7 pages to 14 or 15 pages. And we would shoot those scenes from top to bottom in wide shots first. So it was sort of like doing a scene from a play. So eventually I was able to get the trust of the company and start doing that kind of stuff myself. It was a really cool job in that way. It was exhausting for Kate Irby and I. Kate played Alexander Eames on the show. It was a lot of hours. It was 17 hours. We basically averaged about 17 hours a day, every day, for 10 months a year. So that was tough. You know, I hated that. And I'm glad it's really not allowed. Nobody's allowed to do that anymore with actors. But I left that show a better actor than I was before when I went in. There was so much dialogue to learn all the time. And there were so many weird transitions that I had to make within one scene. Very different than a movie where you would make emotional transitions or the arc would change. In a movie, it probably, like every act, there might be 1 or 2 of those transitions. But in a TV show, there could be 3 transitions within a scene, within one scene. So I didn't know how to do that. I had to learn on the job. And I don't think I would have evolved like I did if it wasn't for that show. Magnificent Seven. Oh, my Lord. We have to talk about Denzel a little bit because he's one of the best actors in the world. I remember I once told him, we were all on our horses. This is Denzel in a nutshell. Like, he's amazing, this guy. He was in the lead, and we had to cross this river and then come back and cross the river again and come back, you know, like you do every movie, you got to do it over and over again. And he was passing me to get back in front again. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, the best actor in America. And he looked back at me, he said, "He's only in America?" Like that. And I thought that was awesome. So working with D was an experience that I'll never forget. He's quite something. But I had friends. Pratt was already a friend of mine. Ethan was already a friend for many, many years previous. There's 7, the Magnificent Seven, obviously, but the 6 of us outside of Denzel really got close. We're all still friends to this day. I talk to them all the time. I talked to Manuel, who played the Mexican gunslinger in it. I talked to him a couple of days ago. Martin Sensmeyer, who played the Native American in it. I talk to him all the time. He's like a little brother to me. And you know, Chris and Ethan are buds. So it was a very comfortable set to be on. It's another thing very similar to the thing that happened in Men in Black, because I had chose to do this high voice for my guy. Everybody got very nervous on the first scene when I did that voice.
Now I got it right. By the Lord and by the law, take back what belongs to me. Are we in agreement?
I remember Antoine, them cutting, just like in Men in Black. And I remember Antoine coming over and came real close to me because he wanted to whisper. And I already known Antoine already, and thought he was amazing. He goes, he said the same exact thing that Barry said to me. He said, "Are you going to do that the whole time?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, is that gonna work?" And I'm like, "I think it's gonna work." He goes, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure." He goes, "Okay, I got your back." And, and he turned, he went back, and producers never approached me, didn't let anybody get near me, and I played the whole character like that in this high voice.
These 2 ungodly creatures broke a rock on my head, robbed me of my possessions. I trailed them for 2 days.
He got a little low when he got emotional and stuff, but it was mainly high.
But to be in the service of others with men that I respect, like you all, well, I shouldn't have to ask for more than that.
It was a great experience. All those guys, like I said, we're still buds. And, for what it is, it's a remake of, Seven Samurai or the original Mag 7, but it's, I'll never forget the shooting of that film because I made some very, very close friends. Thumbsucker.
Do you think Justin's had sex?
That's just the image I want in my head right now.
Yeah, because we weren't much older when we got married. How old do you feel?
Oh.
Well, I mean, Tilda Swinton's, I mean, if you're an actor, Tilda Swinton is a name that, just personally, I'll speak for myself. I think before I met her, I thought she was amazing. I'd seen everything she'd done. And then working with her, she's just amazing. There's nothing like having an incredible actor as your scene partner. Everybody involved in a scene affects the scene, and when you have an actress or an actor like Tilda, it just elevates everything so much, and that's a really comfortable place to play when the camera's rolling, where anything goes and the creativity is just flowing the whole time. And she's she's, one might call her the consummate actor. She's quite something. And an incredible person, and very fun to talk to. And yeah, no, I'll never forget working with her. She was quite something. The Cell.
No one should be treated like that.
Is that right?
No, I mean, it's all Tarsem Darnoir, the director. He's a good friend. I've worked with him a couple of times now. He's amazing. I would do anything for him. He's just a real legit artist. At first, I didn't want to do it because I had played a couple of killers previous to that, I think 2 in a row before that, and I just didn't want to play another killer. But, and I hadn't met Tarsem yet. I just sort of read the script, and I thought it was okay. But I thought the part was a good part, but I kind of just pushed it away. And then, so I didn't give him an answer. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but he sent me a videotape of something that he had shot, which was a commercial, like a MTV type commercial. And so basically it was this. So the camera is up high looking down at a blue tile floor, big blue tiles. The camera's up 20 feet in the air, but you can see the whole square of tiles. In walks a man with a bucket of water, and he's in robes. He walks off, the bucket's there. He walks back on, he leads a goat behind him. He puts the rope down. He takes a long knife out of the sheath. And in this locked off shot, it's all one take. He cuts the goat's throat. This is for real. The goat falls onto the tiles and the blood starts to come out. The guy picks up the bucket of water and throws it on the blood. And the blood spreads across the blue tile. And I thought, holy cow, who would make a travel commercial like that? I need to work for this guy. And I immediately said, I'm in. And then him and I started working together, and we figured out the whole psychology of the character, all this stuff that wasn't scripted, which helped Ayako, the designer, who did all those incredible outfits, and then the special effects makeup people, who I believe won an Oscar for it, and it was just an incredible experience, incredible visual experience, very intense. Playing the part. The actual execution of the part, I was able to dump it off every day after work. I don't carry characters home with me or anything. But the research that I did, I sometimes still have nightmares about some of the research that I did on that. I was exposed to some pretty terrible things, and that was an intense job. Regardless of what the movie turned out to be or whether people like it or not, it was a really intense job.